Chapter 1. Welcome to Pine Street. Narrated by Daniel Cooper, father, 38, former city architect. I never believed in curses, rituals, or neighborhood legends. I believed in blueprints, zoning permits, and the clean, honest lines of modern architecture. That was before we moved to 13 Pine Street. The realtor had called it quaint, idyllic, charmingly historic. What she didn't say was that it had rules, and that those rules weren't optional. We arrived on a warm Sunday morning. The kind of morning where everything smells like cut grass and car exhaust. Ellie had her headphones in, staring out the back window of the SUV, and Max was asleep with his mouth open, clutching the only stuffed animal he hadn't outgrown. "Here we are," I said cheerfully, pulling up to the curb. "Home sweet home." Lena, my wife, gave me a quick smile as she unbuckled her seatbelt. "Do you think he's still asleep?" she whispered, nodding toward Max. I'd let him rest. It was a long drive. We stepped out onto the sidewalk and took in our new kingdom. 2 stories, faded blue paint, a wide porch with chipped railings, and a crooked mailbox with our name hastily stenciled, Cooper. Ellie pulled her hood up without a word. I caught her eye and offered a smile. She didn't return it. The neighbors began to appear within minutes. First came a short, rotund woman with tightly curled white hair and a pie in her hands. "Welcome," she called out as she approached. "I'm Mrs. Caldwell from across the street. You must be the Coopers." "That's us," I replied, shaking her hand. "Daniel. This is Lena, our daughter Ellie, and the one in the car is Max." She nodded pleasantly, ignoring Ellie's evident disinterest. "We're so glad you're here. Not many families stay long in this house." Lena furrowed her brow. "Why's that?" "Oh, nothing serious, dear. Just old age. Some say it's cursed." She laughed as though it were a joke. "But people around here are just traditional. We have our ways. You'll see." She handed over the pie and a thick brown envelope tied with twine. "What's this?" I asked. "Our welcome packet," she said. "Everything you need to know to live safely on Pine Street." I chuckled. "Safety tips? Sounds serious." Her smile faltered for a second. "Oh, it is. Read them tonight. Before dark." The inside of the house smelled like mothballs and cedar. The kind of scent that clings to your clothes, your skin. Dust floated in slants of golden light, disturbed only by our movement. Ellie retreated to the staircase almost immediately, hauling her suitcase behind her. "I call the attic," she muttered. "Let her have it," Lena said gently. "Might make her feel like she's claiming some space." I nodded, but I was still holding the envelope. I opened it. Inside was a typed list titled, "Pine Street Safety Guidelines. Do not go outside after 8:03 p.m. Cover all mirrors before sundown. If you hear your name at night, do not answer. Do not speak to new neighbors for the first 7 days. Leave a glass of water on the windowsill every Friday. Never remove the chains from the basement door. If a family member seems changed, trust your instincts. Never, ever write about the street." There was no "just kidding." No fine print. Just those 8 rules printed on heavy, textured paper. I snorted and handed it to Lena. She read it in silence, then looked at me. "Is this a joke?" "I hope so." We spent the rest of the day unpacking. As the sun dipped below the trees, Ellie called down from the attic. "Hey, did you guys know there's a weird crawl space up here?" I wiped my hands on a towel and climbed the stairs. Her attic was bigger than I remembered from the listing. Sloped ceilings, a single dusty window, wooden beams that groaned in the wind. And yes, there was a small square cutout in the wall. "I think it's storage," I said. Ellie was on her knees, halfway inside. "There's something back there." "What kind of something?" She pulled out a bundle wrapped in a plastic bag. Inside was a cloth-bound journal, water-damaged but intact. There were no names, no dates. Just entries like, "Last night I heard myself calling from the yard. I didn't answer. I think that saved me. They took the neighbor's baby. She forgot the water again. I can't tell who is still real." My stomach dropped. "It's just someone's idea of a spooky story," I said. "Neighborhood folklore." "Right," Ellie muttered, hugging the journal to her chest as she stood. That night, after we ate and tucked, Max and Lena and I sat on the back porch with 2 mugs of tea. The crickets were loud, almost unnaturally so. "You think we should do what the list says?" she asked. "What, cover the mirrors?" "Yeah. I don't know." I smiled faintly. "Maybe. Just in case." We went inside and, somewhat sheepishly, draped towels over the bathroom mirrors. Just in case. At 2:36 a.m., I woke to the sound of footsteps. They were soft, barefoot, moving just outside our bedroom door. I eased the door open. Nothing. The hallway was empty, the lights off. I heard creaking upstairs. Then silence. I peeked into Ellie's room. She was sound asleep, journal on her chest. I checked on Max. He was awake, staring out the window. "Buddy?" He didn't move. I stepped beside him, following his gaze. Outside, in the middle of the street, a small figure stood motionless. It was Max, or someone who looked exactly like him. Chapter 2, The First Mistake. The thing standing in the middle of the street looked like my son. But it wasn't moving. It just stood there, head tilted slightly like it was listening. Its hands hung limply at its sides. The posture, too stiff, too wrong. I blinked and looked down at the real Max. He was still pressed against the glass of the window, breathing slowly, lips parted. "Max," I whispered, "do you see that?" He nodded once, very slowly. "Go back to bed, buddy. I'll take care of it." He didn't argue. He never does when he's scared. I stepped outside with a baseball bat. The air was cold, too cold for July. There was no wind, no cars. Just the faint sound of cicadas cutting the silence like static. The figure didn't move as I approached. Its clothes were identical to Max's. The dinosaur pajamas, the small red socks. But its face, even from 20 feet away, looked too pale, too smooth. Its eyes, they weren't blinking. "Who are you?" I said, tightening my grip. The thing smiled. My chest seized. Then, it began to move backwards. Slowly, silently, without bending its knees. I stopped dead in my tracks. It retreated into the darkness between the street lamps and vanished. I stood there for what felt like an hour, heart pounding. Eventually, I forced myself back inside, locked the door, and checked on Max. He was fast asleep, curled up and peaceful, like nothing had happened at all. In the morning, I didn't say anything. Neither did he. But Lena noticed the tension. "You're both acting weird," she said over breakfast. "Did something happen?" Max looked at me, eyes wide. I shook my head. "Just a bad dream." But Max spilled his juice and refused to speak the rest of the meal. Ellie came downstairs a few hours later with the journal in her hand. "You guys seriously need to read this," she said, dropping it on the counter. "It's just stories." "Not stories," she snapped. "Patterns, rules. We're not the first ones." She opened it to a dog-eared page and pushed it toward me. The first time I saw my brother outside, I thought it was sleepwalking. The second time, he was inside already. That's when I knew it wasn't him. I looked at Max. He was staring at his juice box. "Daniel," Lena said quietly, "what happened last night?" I sighed. There was something outside. It looked like Max. But it wasn't. She didn't laugh. She didn't scoff. Instead, she stood up and went to the kitchen drawer. Pulled out masking tape. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Sealing the windows." That afternoon, the neighbors showed up. A man in a white button-up shirt, pressed khakis, and no smile. "Mr. Cooper," he said. "May I come in?" Sure." He entered like he owned the place. Looked around. Nodded once. "My name is Mr. Avery. I'm part of the Pine Street Association. We monitor disturbances." "Disturbances?" He gave me a tight-lipped smile. "You broke rule number 1. I frowned. "What, going outside after 8:03? He didn't smile this time. "Yes." "You can't be serious." He leaned in slightly. "This street does not joke, Mr. Cooper. Your son was seen at the window. That triggered attention." "From who?" "Not who. What?" Lena appeared in the doorway holding Max. Avery's eyes softened, just for a moment. "It was just a warning," he said. "No damage done this time. But you need to take the rules seriously from now on." He handed me a paper, same list of rules, this time with a red stamp across the top. "First violation, documented." I opened the door for him. "You people are insane." "Insane," he said calmly, "would be ignoring this." And then he was gone. That night I sat up watching the clock. 8:01 p.m. 8:02. I turned off all the lights, made sure the curtains were shut, covered every mirror. 8:03. Silence. 8:10. Still nothing. But then, from the attic, I heard a soft, deliberate tap tap tap. I climbed the stairs slowly, heart in my throat. The attic door was ajar. Inside, Ellie sat cross-legged, staring at the crawlspace wall. "You heard it too?" she asked without turning. "Yes. I think it wants me to open it." "You won't." "I might." I stepped forward. "Ellie?" She turned around. Her eyes were wide and flat. Not scared, not curious, just empty. Then she blinked. The light came back. "I'm kidding," she whispered. "Kinda." In the morning, we found a dead bird on the doorstep. Its eyes had been removed, its wings torn off, arranged perfectly in an X shape. There was a note pinned to its breast with a sewing needle. "Second violation will not be symbolic." Max began crying. Lena threw up in the sink. Ellie picked up the note and read it aloud twice before burning it in the fireplace. No one spoke for the rest of the morning. Later that day, I noticed something odd on the security camera feed. A black shadow on the porch. Not a figure, not a person, just a vague human-shaped void, standing still, watching. I rewound the tape. It wasn't there before 3:17 a.m. And when the clock hit 3:33, it vanished, like it had been sucked backward into the dark. I showed Ellie. She just nodded and said, "That's the one that whispers my name." We didn't go outside after 8:03 again. Not that week. Not ever. And every Friday we placed a glass of water on each windowsill, just like the rule said. We still didn't know what it was for. But by then we didn't care. Obedience was survival. What I didn't know yet, what none of us knew, was that Max had started hearing whispers in his closet. And one night soon he'd start whispering back. Chapter 3, The Things We Don't See. Narrator, Daniel Cooper. It started with the closet. Max began closing it every night and stacking books in front of it. He never said why. I asked once, lightly, half joking, and he said, "Because he comes out when I don't." He didn't elaborate. We stopped asking questions after that. The house had changed. Not dramatically. Nothing obvious. But I started to notice little things. The floorboards creaked in the wrong places. The hallway outside our bedroom felt longer at night. The shadows under the furniture stretched farther than they should have. Lena began waking up with bruises on her arms. Small, perfect circles, like fingertips. One evening she decided to go shopping. We were running low on groceries and we hadn't left the street in almost a week. "It's only 7:30, she said. "I'll be back in 20 minutes. "You sure that's a good idea?" I asked. "I'll be back before the cutoff. I promise." I watched from the porch as she got in the car and drove off. That was the last time I saw her until morning. She came back just before dawn, her headlights flickering like they'd passed through a thunderstorm. She parked crooked, the car engine sputtering. I rushed out as she stumbled toward me, barefoot, pupils blown wide. "Where were you?" I asked. "I don't know," she whispered. I drove 5 minutes down the road and it wasn't there. What wasn't? The store, the streets, the town. Everything was gone. I kept driving and the road looped. I saw the same tree 7 times. The sky. She looked up at me. It wasn't the same sky. That day, I pulled out an old floor plan of the house and decided to map everything. Every closet, every vent, every corner. I thought if I understood the structure, I could understand what was happening. But something was wrong with the blueprint. It showed an extra door in the basement, a door that didn't exist. I went downstairs with a flashlight. There it was, hidden behind old shelves. Small metal with chains wrapped around it like a warning sign. One padlock, rusted but solid. I didn't touch it, not yet. That night, the neighbors gathered outside our house. Not knocking, not yelling, just standing there. Mrs. Caldwell, Mr. Avery, even the quiet teenage girl from the corner. They stood in a circle, silent, watching the house. I turned off every light. At 3 a.m. they left. No one mentioned it in the morning. Ellie found another passage in the attic journal. Some of us change, not because we want to, but because the house reshapes us. The street wants symmetry, obedience. It edits what doesn't belong. She showed it to me without saying a word. I saw the fear in her eyes. We were all starting to feel it, the feeling of being rewritten. The next night, I reviewed the security camera again. At 3:17 a.m., the shape returned. Not on the porch this time, inside the living room. It stood in front of the mirror we had forgotten to cover. Its reflection was normal, human, but the actual figure was dark, wrong. A silhouette of something ancient and thin and too tall. I watched it turn and look directly at the camera, then smile. The power went out right after that. The lights snapped off. The backup generator, dead. I lit candles and checked the windows. Nothing. Then I heard the closet door creak upstairs. Max screamed. I ran. He was standing in the middle of his room, pointing. There were two of them, he sobbed. Two of me. One went into the closet. I opened the door. Nothing inside, except the books Max used to block the door were gone. And carved into the inside wall was a word, hello, written in what looked like teeth marks. That night, we slept in the living room. All of us, together. I stayed up, bat in hand, watching the front door. At exactly 3:33 a.m., there was a single knock. Then silence. Then the doorknob turned once and stopped. In the morning, a note was under the door. The next one doesn't knock. I knew we couldn't live like this. I decided to go speak to Mr. Avery. He opened the door before I knocked, like he was expecting me. You're ready, he said. For what? To see what the street really is. He led me to the back of his house, through a stairwell hidden behind a bookshelf. At the bottom was a concrete room lit with dim yellow bulbs and covered in old photographs. Photos of families. Smiling, happy families in front of this house, this street. Then newer photos. Blank expressions. Empty eyes. Some weren't quite human anymore. They didn't follow the rules, Avery said. I turned to him. What are we dealing with? He looked up. An intelligence. A presence. A memory that lives in the land beneath us. The rules are a pact, behavior in exchange for safety. But the street, it always wants more. Why don't people leave? Because by the time they want to, it's too late. The street remembers you. When I returned home, the chains on the basement door were gone. I hadn't touched them. No one had. They were just gone. Chapter 4, The Founders. Narrator, Ellie Cooper. My father didn't sleep after that night. He sat by the basement door, shotgun across his lap, waiting for it to open again. It didn't, but we could hear the whispers behind it. Whispers and voices we almost recognized. I couldn't stop thinking about that journal in the attic, the one written by the woman who lived here before us. So I went back up, flashlight in hand, and read deeper into the entries. Near the back, the handwriting shifted, messy, erratic. The street wasn't built. It was summoned. That line stuck with me. Summoned. Like a ritual. The next morning, I went to see Mrs. Caldwell. I told her I knew something was wrong. That we weren't stupid. That something was alive here. She stared at me for a long time, then nodded. You should come to the archive. The what? You'll see. The archive was underneath her house. Past a false wall in her pantry. Down a ladder. into something that looked older than the town itself. Brick walls, no lights, just oil lamps and stacks of journals, files, VHS tapes. She handed me one marked September 1951. It showed a group of families standing in front of newly constructed houses. 13 of them, all smiling, all holding hands. Mrs. Caldwell paused the tape. "These were the founders," she said. "They didn't come here by accident. They were chosen." "Chosen by who?" She didn't answer. She showed me a map, the original layout of the neighborhood. It formed a perfect circle. Every house an equal spoke with one at the center, 13 Pine Street. Our house. "That one was built first," she said. "The seed house. The origin." My blood ran cold. We hadn't bought a home. We'd inherited a throne. In another journal, I found an entry from a founder named Beatrice Morrow. "The land rejects the disobedient. It eats the defiant." We thought we could shape it, but the street shapes us. There was a photo clipped to the page. Her house, halfway sunken into the earth. Just gone. Mrs. Caldwell lit a candle and sat across from me. "You need to understand something," she said. "There is no curse, no demon. It's not even evil in the way you think." "Then what is it?" "It's a system, and it's hungry." That night I heard scratching at the walls. Not rats, voices, repeating our names. In our voices, Max began talking to someone in the mirror again. He called it the boy with no mouth. He said they played chess even though the pieces never moved. We found him one night drawing strange shapes into his bedsheets with a spoon. When we asked why, he said, "So the house knows I'm listening." Daniel stopped eating. He said food tasted reversed, like it had lived through digestion before. He stared out windows that didn't exist the week before. I went back to the archive alone. I had to understand more. I found a folder labeled Rule Makers. Inside, transcripts, letters, sealed confessions. One from 1967 shook me. We thought rules could contain it. Turns out the rules just entertain it. It likes to pretend, to wear our logic like a costume. But the moment you forget it's a game, the street stops pretending. Mrs. Caldwell gave me one last item, a key made of bone. "To the gate beneath the house," she said. "The original one." "What's behind it?" She looked at me. "Don't ask questions you're not ready to answer." I didn't listen. That night I used it. I opened the gate in the basement behind the chain door. The air was thick. What? Breathing. Down there was a staircase carved from red stone. It went down much farther than our house should allow. I counted the steps. There were 13. At the bottom, a chamber, circular, silent, and in the center, a stone table covered in names. Ours was the last one carved. Above it, an eye. Not painted, not carved, an actual eye, and it blinked. I ran, back up the stairs. But as I reached the basement door, I heard it behind me. Footsteps, not running, pacing, like something walking in slow circles, waiting for me to return. When I got back to the living room, Daniel was gone. Max was asleep on the ceiling, smiling, and on the mirror was a message written in condensation. The game begins again. Chapter 5, Rule number 13. Narrator, Ellie Cooper. I didn't sleep after I saw the eye. I didn't tell my parents either. There are some things you can't explain with words. Some things that don't want to be spoken aloud. Because the moment you do, they know you're ready to be taken. Daniel never came back that night. At least not whole. In the morning he was standing outside staring at the front door. His skin looked too tight. His voice was too calm. "Where did you go?" I asked. "I've always been here," he replied, smiling. But it wasn't his smile. Not really. I ran to Mrs. Caldwell's. She already knew. She was holding her cat and crying quietly. "I warned you," she said. "The gate wasn't for you. What do I do? Pray it's not too late. And remember." She handed me a small card. On it, a single phrase. Rule number 13. Never follow someone who returns from the dark. I went home and locked myself in the bathroom. I needed space. Something that didn't breathe back. That's when the lights began to flicker. The house sighed. And Daniel, or what was now wearing him, knocked on the door. "Ellie," it said, "let me in. I found something." I stayed silent. It laughed. "You're learning." Max wasn't Max anymore either. He had stopped blinking, and his shadow was walking on its own. I realized what the street was doing. It wasn't killing us. It was replacing us. I gathered what I could, the journal, the card, and the bone key. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I went back down, back through the gate, to the eye. But this time I didn't run. The chamber felt older, hungrier. I walked to the stone table and placed my name over the carving. "Take me," I whispered. "Not them." The eye opened fully. It blinked once, and then the walls began to move. I fell into a darkness that wasn't empty, was watching me. And then I saw it, the street, but from beneath, like its skeleton, thousands of rooms, millions of mirrors, each one showing a version of me that made a different choice. Some dead, some monstrous, one screaming forever. A voice spoke from nowhere and everywhere. "You broke rule number 13. I didn't follow him," I said. "I came to trade." Silence. Then a heartbeat, a pulse through the stone. It was listening. The street doesn't understand love or sacrifice, but it understands balance. It took Daniel back and gave me something else. Not my brother, but a version of him without the darkness inside. For now, we packed that night. Didn't even wait for sunrise. Mrs. Caldwell watched us from her porch. She nodded once. "Remember," she said, "you never leave Pine Street. You just stop seeing it." We moved to another state, changed our names, started over. But I still hear the whispers at 3:13 a.m. And Max draws the symbols in his notebooks. And sometimes, when I blink too slowly, I see a house that's no longer there. Because Pine Street isn't a place, it's a pattern. And it always finds a way back in. The end. Chapter 6, The Final Rule. Ellie. I don't remember when I last felt like myself. Maybe it was the night Max smiled at me like he knew something I didn't. Or maybe it was when I first read that diary in the attic and part of me wished it was true, just to feel anything real. The rules never made sense until they started to break on their own. The basement door was open this morning. We didn't open it. Dad says we're leaving. Mom won't pack. She sits in front of the covered mirror and hums the song she used to sing when we were little. Only the mirror isn't covered anymore, and the reflection in it isn't humming back. Max draws strange symbols on the walls. He says he doesn't remember doing it. I believe him. But what scares me more is, I know what they mean. To break the street, you must break the family. We find it written in red, under the floorboards, on the back of old photographs, behind the kitchen wallpaper. It's not just a rule. It's a choice, sacrifice, or submission. The neighbors stop pretending. They stand in our yard with their frozen smiles, whispering old names that don't belong to them. We break the mirrors. We tear down the blackout curtains. We rip the chains off the basement and step into the dark. Together. And the house screams. The walls bleed. The water turns to ash. Max starts to fade. Not die, fade. Like a photograph left in the sun. Dad tries to hold on to him. But Max looks at him and says, "You have to forget me to remember who you are." And then he's gone. Mom vanishes next. Her hum still echoes through the hallways. I scream until my throat breaks, but no one answers. In the final moment, Dad finds me in the attic. He holds the diary. He asks me one last question. "Are you still you?" I don't know the answer. The next morning, there's one survivor. They walk down the street barefoot, dazed, clothes torn, covered in dust. The neighbors wave. The house stands empty. Only no one remembers their name, not even themselves. And the street starts again.